So welcome again to our Fireside chat that talks about the future of market research. There's a lot to cover today. We prepared a lot of interesting things that we're going to go over. But just before we start, I would like to draw your attention to our chat box where you can actually type any question that pops up. Of course, when we get to the Q&A session at the end of this hour, we will be able to answer some of the questions by our panelists. So please feel free to ask any questions that you would like, and let's kick it off. Well, we have a respectable panelists today joining us here, leaders in market research, and they're going to share with us their vision, their experience, how they're revolutionizing their domain of market research. I would like each one of you guys just to maybe take a minute to talk about yourselves. And we're going to start with Diane Meyer from Dorel Juvenile. Hi, Diane.
Hi, everybody. Diane Meyer. I am the VP of Consumer Experience here at Dorel Juvenile. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with Dorel Juvenile. Many of you probably actually have our products in your home or in your car and have used them over the years. But for those who aren't familiar, Dorel Juvenile is really a family of brands in baby gear, infant health and safety, as well as toys. And that's namely Maxi Cozy, Safety First, Tiny Love, and Costco Kids. And my team and I here at Dorel are responsible for all of our direct connections when it comes to the consumer. And that includes our consumer care team, our consumer insights team, direct-to-consumer, CRM, and omnichannel digital shelf. And I will share that within the past few months, I've become a very loyal customer of Revuze, and look forward to having you guys hear the conversation today.
Thanks so much, Dan. That's great. We love the brand, by the way. So good work on that. We have Danny Gardner with us. Please, Danny, from Haleon.
Yeah, wonderful to be here. And wonderful kind of set of brands, Diane. Definitely kind of in a slightly different space. So I'm Danny Gardner. I'm with Haleon. We're the CPG behind Advil, Sensodyne toothpaste, Tums, Robitussin, and then a lot of other leading over-the-counter brands that we buy digitally. Either through Amazon.com or through in-store, brick-and-mortar retail, wholesale, pretty much anywhere you would look to go get medicine. So I've been in my role about 5 years. I'm the head of social media insights and analytics. I oversee organic and earned media measurement, more influencer marketing, influencer measurement these days, white space research, innovation. There's a lot of different cases that we use. Really, voice of customers is kind of like the larger branding of what my role is, but I focus primarily on social, which is, similar to reviews, like very, it's unstructured text. And there's more data created in the space every second that anyone can really wrap their head around. So I manage the tech stack for us as well, some of the administrative things. And I sit in our consumer insights and analytics team. And so I kind of work with the traditional market researchers, digital analytics, measurement. I kind of touch a lot. Basically everything that we do on social media, I kind of touch, but I do wear a market research hat, and very excited to talk about what we've kind of seen over the last few years in the space.
Thanks so much, Danny. Yeah, we're going to touch on a lot of these points, and happy to hear your experience. Go on to Noa Shachaff. He's head of consumer insights and analytics at Revuze. Hi, Noa.
Hi. So you've introduced me well. Noa Shachaff. I've been in market research for over 20 years. Did almost every type. Neurological studies, focus group surveys, you name it. And fortuitously, I came upon Revuze after trying to invent it in a CPG company that I worked at. Just thrilled to be here and to share my experience across my career. Once again, head the consumer insights and analytics at Revuze. We do professional services reports. And we use Revuze to provide the type of insights that I used to use surveys for, focus groups for, traditional market research for. We can basically do most of those using Revuze data, which I think is a quite enticing, thrilling, and makes me want to come to work every day.
Thanks so much, Noa. That's great. As promised, we have great panelists here that we're going to learn a lot from them. But before I'll dive into some questions for you guys specifically, maybe just to spend a minute on the big revolution, because I think this is a really, really exciting times for us in the market research world, because we are actually viewing in front of our eyes a big revolution, and it's not something that you get to see a lot. We definitely see how market research has been disrupted with technology and new data sources that haven't been there before. And this really unlocks a lot of new capabilities for market research in many, many different domains. As we all know, innovation technology touches almost every area of our lives, and now it finally came to the market research domain as well, with full force, with new capabilities. And actually, every brand that we are aware of, and we'll hear some stories in a minute, is directly impacted by it. And the really interesting question that we're going to unveil today is how and what do they do about it? And this is, I think, can kick us off directly to the first questions that I would like to talk. But just beforehand, we would like to start with the questions to the audience that we have here, to the participants. We're going to have 3 poll questions today. It's really interesting to see what everyone that on this participant list can actually project and see in these poll ones. Well, the first one that I would like you to give your ideas would be, and what is the percentage that you think that brands are relying on social listening as a way to understand consumers? So as you can see right now in the poll, you have 3 options to choose from, and please, let's take 30 seconds for you to try and estimate what's the percentage of brands relying on social listening as a way to understanding consumers. Obviously, you have 3 options here. And soon we're going to see the results. Since we have so many participants on this webinar, I think it's going to be interesting to see the answers. Well, we can see here that 31% of us thought that 61%, that's the one, which is a very, very big number, of course. But the most of you thought that it's going to be 22% of brands are using social listening. But let's see the real answer for that. I think it's going to be very interesting to learn that actually 61% of brands rely on social listening, which is a big, big, big number, of course. And it's something that is trending up dramatically, where more and more brands understand and appreciate social listening as a base for understanding consumers and markets. And that's exactly a good question to kick us off. And I would like to take the first one with you, Diane, okay? And just to ask you to hear your explanations of what are some of the key drivers to the market research revolution? What drives it up? What changes it? Okay, we know that there is a big revolution. What drives it? Why is it there?
I think, it's a really interesting question, and it's one that I kind of, had to kind of give careful consideration, because there's obviously so many key drivers, if you will, to this revolution. But I think it really starts with the fact that, more and more organizations are starting to form sort of this consumer first organization or mentality. We've all talked about consumer experience in the past. I mean, truthfully, before it even became a buzzword or a buzz term, if you will, even before a role like myself, as VP of consumer experience even existed in the past, we always knew it was a thing, but didn't really have necessarily a name for it. But now more than ever, brands are really trying to differentiate themselves, going beyond features and benefits. It's really about what is that experience that you're bringing to the consumer? And it's not just the shopping experience. It's what's the onboarding experience when they've actually purchased your product. And just as importantly, what is that support experience? I always say whenever I approach anything, particularly as we're looking at the support experience for someone who's an owner at this point, never want to become a cable company. So you don't want to provide that initial sort of relationship with the consumer where you're providing all the best and the greatest and the shiny objects and all of that. And then once they're an owner, you kind of forget about them and you just sort of let them go on, and you've gone on to your acquisition and you forget really about sort of that retention. And, consumers these days, they really want to feel heard and be seen. And unless we're listening to what they say and we're hearing what they actually have to say, we're not able to deliver, let's say, a frictionless experience. I mean, I've always been a believer in sort of the concept of level of effort equals loyalty. So one of the things I often say to my team and to, my colleagues, if you will, is stop and ask yourself, how easy is it to be our consumer? And if the answer to that doesn't come to you readily, then we need to be doing some more insights and some more research.
Definitely. That's great. That's great to hear. Again, I can really relate to that. Danny, if you have anything to add to these questions, we'd be happy to hear as well.
Yeah, really great insight. I think the retention is the huge piece, and I kind of see that. Excuse me. I see it firsthand through what we do in social. Is this the guy that's kind of the social insights guy, also part of the actual brand marketing team. That retention is difficult, right? How do you keep people engaged, right? And, attitudes, perceptions, behaviors, this all changes, right? And I think this is category agnostic, right? I mean, at the end of the day, behind these screens that we look at are people, right? And people act on a set of behaviors, right? People revert back to certain behaviors, based on their conditions, their background. You boil that down to a lot of, different levels, ethnicity, right? Size of family, right? There's all these different variables that you can kind of consider. And that journey looks so different. And in healthcare, and especially for consumer healthcare, that journey is so personalized. And that's what I think makes it so difficult today in market research, is that it's hard to know what to focus on because there's a surplus of data. And data doesn't necessarily mean information. And I think that's where the power of analytics, applied analytics, I think has really kind of transformed the way we do research, which is, and you can probably tell I come from the quantitative side of the house. But I think there's a fair balance, as we've kind of learned, between quant and qual, right? And that consumer sentiment, right? And some things are observational, some things are trends. How do you define a trend, right? And so a lot of it has to be backed by data. And again, this moves so fast, and it's kind of twofold, right? There's data collection, and there's synthesis, analysis, application, right? Actionability, right? There's a lot of these different elements that make up the whole end-to-end market research process. And that's going back to Diane's point. I think retention is kind of where brands struggle to execute. I think, and I look at just some of the work that I do, I think it's probably the toughest part, right? And so I think that's clearly been one of the biggest challenges, but also one of the biggest opportunities, right? You think about the advancement of AI, right? And we can interpret and analyze more than we ever could have before. And we have 28 different brands. Right, we compete in 7 major CPG categories. There's no shortage of kind of change. What do people believe versus, what's fake, what's not, and so it's really, really challenging the different dynamics that we look at for our consumers because we have so many. But I think that's an opportunity more than anything. So really good points, Diane. And I think we see a lot of the same things on our side of the business too.
And if I may add, I think, coming from the client side, before I came to Revuze, I started to feel like traditional market research, meaning surveys, focus groups, were just too slow to get at the insights and too expensive. In a fast-paced world where you need the insights as quickly as possible in order to make the decisions fast, in order to change the products or what needs to be changed in the product fast, waiting months and months for the results to get a read on your products is just too slow. And the idea that there is so much data out there that you could be a fly on the wall and leverage instead of using, initiating and trying to get people to remember what it was 6 months ago when they experienced the product. Why not just tap into their fresh memory, into how they're talking about it very, very quickly after they experienced it? Why not just be that fly on the wall, leverage all that data that's out there and use it to understand what's working and not working with your products? And once I understood that the world is going there and that you can get the level of insights that you could get from focus groups and surveys, but with much bigger data samples and more accurate and more approximate to the experience level, is when I understood that, the cheese has moved. and that I had to be a part of it.
All right, thanks for that. Well, great key drivers again, and thanks for that. That leads us to the next question that I would like to share with you guys, and then maybe I think Danny, you can take this one, or at least start. And again, to your understanding, to your experience, and obviously we know that you have a lot, so we'd be happy to hear again what is going to take to stand out in this revolution, okay? Because there are going to be many solutions, many technologies, many abbreviations for technology, AI, ML, and any combination of two letters are going to come in. But not all will provide, of course, the value that we need and looking for as researchers. And what are your perspective, and what's your take on which ones are going to actually stand out in this revolution?
Yeah, a really good question. It's a big question. I think you boil it down. I mean, well, you almost can't boil it down. But you look at the technology that exists today, right? And I think like when I see the landscape of all the different business intelligence tools, all of them are pretty well equipped to service the needs of clients and big companies like ours. But to stand out, I mean, and I think Diane and Noa, we kind of touched on it before, right? Speak to insight, right? How do I deliver better information faster to more people, right? Scale. You could really kind of summarize it in one term. And in a big company, that's really difficult, right? So like, scale takes on different interpretations depending on the size of your company. But ideally, right, we want to bake in, the 15 major use cases we have for social listening and, insights that come from the internet. Drive that across the business, across all their brands. It's really difficult to do, right? Just from a time management and investment perspective. But to stand out, I think it's actually more simple than companies realize, is that it's, investment, right? I mean, you can't win in this game unless you spend a little bit of money. I think it's an uncomfortable reality for a lot of brands, is that a lot of brands still don't do this. Or they're paying exorbitant fees to agencies because that's the way that it was always done. And there's always going to be a role for agencies in this space. But I think one of the most obvious learnings we had in our role, and now other companies are realizing it too, is that you can in-house this. At a point in time, it wasn't more effective to in-house this. And in fact, in the legacy companies I worked at, this was like the third go around. And it didn't really work out very well in 2015, 2017. So I think it's really as simple as, proof of concept, right? And I don't think that proof of concept is very hard to prove, especially because there's been so many blueprints and so many trails blazed in the space, and that speaks not just for social, but also for ratings and reviews. And I think like that's another large piece of kind of what we do in larger voice of customer. Different velocity than social, different kind of insights and findings, but it's the same type of thing, right? We have to be in this space, and we have to invest time and energy and resources into getting better, because it's not easy. And I think to stand out, thankfully, I mean, the tech is pretty much, as good as it's ever been, and it keeps getting better. And so I think like that enables us, especially people who are new to this journey, right? And that maybe don't necessarily have the experience in building a team or capability like this. It's never been easier. And so that's also what makes it really difficult, because our competitors are starting to learn that too. So then it becomes an arms race, right? Then it becomes who can get to this insight faster, who can predict the next charcoal toothpaste first, right? Or ashwagandha. And like Noah said, I mean, like traditional market research, I mean, there's a long lead time, right? And it's expensive to run this type of research. I'll say, and this has become very apparent to me over the years, is that they're complementary. One can't really replace the other, right? I mean, social media is uncontrolled, right? It's unsolicited, it's unbiased. Can't really replicate it any other way. Certainly not in a focus group or in an interview. But that's also a disadvantage, right? You don't know as much about the actual person behind the screen. So that's also, I think, what makes it so complicated, is that, stand out, right? We're all working with incomplete data sets. It's never been harder to augment all of this across different personas, and that varies by brand, by competitor. So it really is very difficult, but I think it honestly starts by proof of concept, right? By just having something in place. And I think the learnings kind of come naturally. And speaking from experience and from other companies I know that do this.
I agree. I think that talking from my perspective, what would make a social listening or a consumer listening company stand out from its competitors? It's really, as you said, the quality of the insights. When a client looks at the insights coming from the tool, does it resonate? Does it jive with other market research tools that they've conducted in the past? And is it giving an extra layer of what they used to get in the past? And from my standpoint, I would like to get what would make me stand out more is data integrity. as you said, social listening, you don't know who wrote it. You don't know if it's an influencer that was paid to write the review, whether it's a trend that's going to go away in a week or two. And I'm all for social listening in terms of keeping an eye on, a finger on the pulse as to what people are talking about. It's very important. But at the end of the day, are people really purchasing? Are people really happy with their purchase? Is it meeting expectations? Is it here to stay? Does it have staying power? That's where reviews comes in. So it's very complementary. And at the end of the day, both need to be used. And what I love about reviews is the fact that you can actually take away the incentivized and the sort of like fake news-ish part of it and stay with the organic reviews and see what people really feel. And you can get both views. You can get the organic reviews, and that can be used for R&D purposes, and you can get the incentivized reviews in and see where the industry wants to take, what the industry's agendas are. And they're both valuable. So level of insights and data integrity. That's my 2 cents.
So basically what you're saying is that the ability to distinguish between incentivized and non-incentivized is to zoom into the ones that are written out of the free will.
Right.
This is what really stand out, because you're going to get more objective with the analysis, obviously.
That's what we call organic reviews. Reviews that were written on the, was the consumer wrote it on their own accord. They wanted to share the experience. This was not incentivized. No free gifts were sent. And they're very, very insightful. And we have the incentivized reviews and the ability to distinguish between them. I think that's very key.
Yeah. And I think that just over time too, because we've seen that. And I was new to kind of the e-commerce side of ratings and reviews. And so I didn't understand syndication, right, and promoted reviews. And as a consumer, I rarely even leave a review. So, it's like one of those things where I have no outside insight, right? And I have no experience there. I mean, I know I look at them, don't really take the time to write them. I'm an irrational consumer. I'm an irrational a lot of things. So like when I try to put myself in those shoes, I have a hard time doing it. But sure enough, when they hand me the responsibility of like, hey, it's your job to oversee this and operationalize it, right? That was one of the most obvious things, right? I could cut it in a very, very basic way. It was somewhat manual. As to like what was promoted, what wasn't promoted, right? And we spend money, right, to get some of these reviews. And no, like you said, there's an advantage to both. I didn't understand that either. In the conversations I used to have, it's like, oh, well, we don't care about the paid reviews. You want the organic ones. Mm-hmm. And same kind of lens we look at through social listening, right? That's the whole difference between organic, paid, earned, right? And so like there's a different kind of content type. All of them are interesting. All of them are tactical. But in reviews, it's also just slightly different insight. And we see that as a company that produces physical products, right? And Diane, so do you, right? With physical packaging, right? That was one of the first questions that I remember being asked when we first started our social listening team was that, what do people say about, the actual packaging? There was one question I remember I got a couple of years ago. Our Tom's team was interested in kosher label and whether or not people would recognize the kosher label if we removed it or we changed it. And so there were some interesting considerations we had around the physical packaging of the product, each form itself. And, that didn't come through social. And so that was a very easy and obvious learning for us. But in reviews, we did, right? When people ship a carton of chapstick, right, and it gets left out, in the box truck outside the CVS and it melts, right? Some things are out of your control, but it's entirely different. It's an entirely different kind of lens in finding. And so I think it's all valuable, but it's one more dimension, more. It's like 2 or 3 more dimensions you have to consider when your consumers speak back to you. I think it was hard for us to basically divvy it out when we first started. But I know reviews is technology a little bit, and so I know you guys are wise to kind of create that documentation because that was such a difficult thing and we're still talking about it today. Thing when it comes to understanding influence, right? And people who are buying things based off of perception and based off of someone who's paid to promote something, which someone still might buy, like me, rational. But in all really good points, Noah, we kind of echo that from kind of the building and the ways of working that we tried to iron out over the years.
That's good. Well, if I could summarize this, then I think what you guys are talking about is what would take to stand out in this revolution is not only to be able to get to the data source, right, which is available today, but also how to differentiate between the different types of sources within that, the different consumers, the different reviewers, in order to be able to align better with what we are trying to achieve with the research. Maybe for some use cases, we will want to analyze both promoted, maybe for specific research that we would like to do, like trends or volume of data. But in order to get to the real understanding of satisfaction from a specific feature of a product, certainly I would like to maybe focus on the parts of the data that are only written out of free will. Because what we saw from our experience is that usually the promoted ones tend to be more positive, and that's going to surprise anyone, right? We're getting some free products, so coupons or discounts, we're all happy, and we tend to write about it. Okay, let's go on to the next questions. And the next one, I would like to take with new Noa to kick it off. And we are all aware of ChatGPT and AI being used all over today. But I would like to ask you, Noa, how are ChatGPT and other AI-driven tools, and there are many of them, of course, how do they transform consumer insights methodology? Because obviously something is changing here. There's a new... And from your experience, if you can read with us.
So I would say, amazingly, ChatGPT is a good friend of my team. I mean, we use it to expedite things a lot. I mean, at the end of the day, the revolution we're talking about in this webinar is really about speeding things up and, scaling and just getting to the insights faster, better. ChatGPT is certainly speeding things up to the max. Things that used to be done manually by hundreds of research teams are now done automatically, like extrapolating themes from open-ended questions, summarizing big data sets. This was all done manually in the past. Today, it's done completely automatically. So absolutely amazing stuff. And, simple questions that you used to Google search in the past and have to read through tens and tens of Google ads until you got to now you just ask a question and you get a simple answer. So in that regard, this is amazing. The downside of this is that it's making market researchers lazy, because now you can put a question in the prompt. You can just put a prompt and get an answer. And you may make some grave mistakes because ChatGPT doesn't give you the sources on which it based the answer. You don't really know what it based the answers on, what the sources were, what time frame it's using. And to be honest with you, I actually did a little research. I asked ChatGPT, can I use you instead of market research tools? I actually asked it. And I have to say, it was very, very candid with me. Said, well, you can definitely use me to make recommendations, but please give me the data set. I need the data set from you because I'm limited in the time frame. I use ChatGPT 4. I only go until December 2023. And I don't have current data necessarily when I answer your question. I don't scroll the internet when I answer your question. I have this whole answer from ChatGPT. And it said, if you just give me the sources on which to base my answers, I would be happy to help you. And, a lot of people don't do what I did. They don't ask it, how candid are you? How honest are you? How credible and accurate are you? They just ask the question and they give an answer. And I think the companies that will stand out in this space will be companies that are very transparent in terms of what data they are basing their insights on. But alongside that, use ChatGPT type tools or AI to really expedite the insight generation. And I feel that that's what basically Revuze does. We are very transparent about our data. We show what the insights are based on. But we also use AI to get at the insights a lot quicker. So we're all for ChatGPT. It's just that an AI tool, you just need to know how to use it, when to use it, what to use it for. And again, be very careful about asking it a question and trusting it completely because you don't really know. So just, use a tool that combines the best of both worlds. That's my recommendation.
But thanks for that. Maybe, Diane, I guess you are being approached a lot with these kind of questions internally, right? What about the ChatGPT? It's really nice, and probably everyone gets excited that it can generate text like humans, which is very, of course, exciting and amazing. But then I'm guessing it's coming to you, and how do you answer this? How do you approach this?
I mean, I think carefully. It's funny, several of us and some of my colleagues may even be on today, so they'll probably laugh. But AI is sort of, it's a buzzword, if you will. Just like quite frankly, I been in this CPG world for so many years. I remember when supply chain buzzword. Digital was a buzzword. So AI has kind of taken on that, but folks don't realize there needs to be some context to it. But I think the key for us, obviously we're using platforms like Revuze, but I think for some of the other things that we do, let's say we're in Salesforce Service Cloud and we have an AI chatbot. And I think the key is, again, and it plays a little off of Noah, what you were saying. The key is you have to have the foundation there. So we can't allow consumers or have consumers, if you will, self-service if we don't have the foundational information there, if we don't have all the inputs, if we don't have all of, the possibilities, if you will, if it's not all there. And it's really a matter of, how do you use it to its best possible extent? So for instance, we might do SEO. With keyword mining that we do through AI and generate content, through AI, for search capabilities, let's say, partnering with folks on our Amazon SEO or even our own internal, SEO for our D2C. So I think it's really taking the best of it because I'm a Microsoft Copilot user myself, and I have written many, many things, through Microsoft Copilot. It kind of gives you that little bit of a head start, but recognize that you also have to layer on the intelligence, if you will, and sort of, the ability to edit, but it allows you to do something quicker, faster, more nimble, because it gives you that head start. And a lot of us, myself included, I'm not a copywriter. I'm not someone who's, has a natural affinity, if you will, to copy. And it sort of allows me to, get the ideas, put the ideas together, and then help to sort of wordsmith it. So, but at the end of the day, it's really about that foundational layer, then ensuring that you have that in place.
That's great. Great, Diane. Thanks so much for sharing this. Okay, this brings us to the next poll question. And again, thank you for participating in the first one. This one will be equally exciting as well. So the question I would like to get your take on, I'm talking about to the participants, of course, is that AI is said to make a big splash in the CX world, right? A very, very big splash. That's what's projected, of course. But where do you think it will have the most impact? Because it can impact in so many different ways. Let's try to focus and understand where would we have the most impact. And that will be interesting to take your take on that. And then we see the answers. So let's give it a few seconds for everyone to put their answer. Okay, running up. Okay, and here are the results from the poll. Still not the answer that we're going to reveal in a minute, but where you guys, the participants, and we have a very big number of you guys, where you think AI will have the most impact in the CX world is mainly all of the above, which is, I think, not surprisingly. It's going to be mainly around customer self-service, actionable customer insights, and freeing up staff resources. And most of you thought that all of those are going to be impactful. So thanks for participating, and let's actually see what the real results are. And it's as follows. So in the next few years, AI will significantly, impact customer self-service, then followed by actionable consumer insights, and then freeing up staff resources. These are, again, what digital CX leaders have said. And I think it's quite proportional to what we had in this poll. So good work, everyone, on this one. And let's continue, guys. We have some few more interesting questions we would like to get experience with. And I would like now also, please, to take this one and start and kick this one off as well. And the real question I'm usually getting, and everyone is talking about, can online review insights even be trusted? Right? A lot of get afraid of reviews being faked or in some way being promoted in a negative way. Also, we're getting this question a lot, and I really like to hear you guys. What do you think about? Can we really trust this source of information, good as it might be, but can we trust it?
I can tell it from my end, because I work with reviews all day, every day. It can absolutely be trusted because we see the kind of insights that are coming from it. But, and there is a big but, not all reviews are created equal. Not all reviews can be trusted to the same extent. As we said, organic reviews written, following a person's own will to kind of share an experience can be much more trusted than a review that was written after a gift was sent home in return for a review. And once again, in order to stand out from the competition in this space, you have to be a company that can distinguish between the organic and the incentivized reviews. However, when a bad review is written under an incentive, it's even more valuable than an organic review because this person was supposed to write a positive review. They got a gift. So if they're writing a negative review, you should really pay attention to it. Okay? So again, we have an ability to distinguish between both, and they're both extremely insightful because putting the incentivized reviews in tells you what the industry's agenda is, and it's very important to know where the industry wants to take things and what they're pushing, what messaging they're pushing at consumers. But we're also able to only look at the organic reviews, and that's very valuable for product development purposes. I will say this, and this is a very important point to stress. I don't know any other tool that gets to SKU level insights better than reviews. You have social listening, it gets you to the brand level really, really nicely. Tells you what people are saying about your brand. It might even tell you some stuff about the product level. At the SKU level, I don't think anything matches reviews because every review is attached to a SKU. A product that not only has a name, but has a size, has a color. So if you want to get at what people are thinking about your red lipstick size, mini, it's very, very difficult to get it through any other methodology but reviews. The social listening level will get you to the brand, might get you in the vicinity of the product series, but to get to the SKU level, I think time and time again, reviews has shown me that there is really no match to review data. That's my 2 cents on that.
Thanks. Now, Danny, maybe we can learn from your experience, coming also from the social world, which is also a very, very a critical issue there.
Yeah. And Noah kind of hit all the kind of pain points that, again, and this is also something I learned just in taking on the ratings here, review side of the house, is that SKU level emphasis, right? Is that because that was one of the most obvious questions that our brand teams would ask me, right? I have, let's say 10, 15 SKUs and, this assortment in this retailer, right? With X number of seasonal products, they'll come in, on this date. There's a lot of different movement, right? And that's the insight that we would kind of want to gain insight into. And on the social listening side, as the guy who built the team, I was also tasked with setting, what we want our baseline tracking to be, brand level or SKU level, right? Good example of that is, chapstick, right? Which I've been kind of fiddling around with here It's a brand we recently sold, but we owned for a long time. And there's a bunch of different flavors, right? And when we initially started, and we had 32 different searches for the 32 different flavors we had. There's actually more than that. So there actually was, and that's maybe a better example of where we could get to SKU level results, or as close to SKU level results. But for most brands, we couldn't, right? When consumers describe the brand, they're not always describing, right, the, whatever fast action, whatever kind of sub brand or, any other kind of words that we put in our listing, or we put in the name of the product. So that's, it's a clear disadvantage. I would also say that sometimes when we have a lot of SKUs, there's less reviews. So I've had instances of where people will write a review on a certain SKU. Yeah, I can get that level of data, but I've got 4 reviews. What am I going to do with a sample size of 4? I'm not against the sample size of 4 because I'm a big proponent of small data and big data, right? Big data, I think, is much more understood, right? As being that lots and lots, billions of data points are generated, but we've acted off of tons of insight from small data and anecdote, right? I'm not necessarily saying that we create a brand new product based off of that, but it's stimulus, right? It creates discourse and discussion. So that's where I'd say sometimes having SKU level doesn't necessarily, again, mean that, and this has to do with our assortment, right, and our size. Right? There's some brands I know, right? I work with Feastables, and it's interesting learning about their business because they only have like 5 or 6 SKUs. And so, but they're working through a lot of the same kind of challenges and looking for insight all the same, right? Just like us, but they have a wealth of reviews, right? It's all focused, right? As opposed to us, where some of our Advil products that have been listed or are owned by third parties, right, or is a third-party reseller, right? Different degree of reviews. So it's definitely an advantage, but I've also seen where like it doesn't necessarily help us. So I think it's more useful depending on certain products, depending on the category. I don't know if there's any correlation to like the amount of investment we have. For example, like if there's more reviews, like Amazon, we know has the highest velocity. You have more reviews and more visits on Amazon.com. That's probably a surprise to no one because Amazon is the leading .com, right? And they pretty much sell everything, right? You can get everything within 6 hours now. So there is some skew in the results there, but generally speaking, it's got its pros and its cons. But you're right, social listening can only go so far, and that's where we look to reviews, right? Again, complementary and not necessarily replacing one over the other, right? It's like any toolbox, right? It's knowing which tool to use for the given problem. But no, I touched upon a lot of the, like, the kind of aha moments that we had, trying to distinguish where to use social listening versus radio interviews.
That's great. Yeah, I can share again just maybe my experience. We've been doing this for so many years. I can tell you that trusting online reviews is something that is built over the years for brands. A lot of skeptical in the beginning, and now it's fully trusted, especially when you compare of insights from online reviews to the traditional ways of research, and you can see the correlation. That's really where brands started to understand, okay, we see exactly the same things, and this really helped building the trust, because even if some of them are fake and some of them are, they even each other because they go both ways to negative and positive. Obviously, topics of discussion, discovery is always there. New products, new brands are always there, and this is something that you can always trust. So certainly for the past 13 years I'm in this domain, you can really see how the trust is being built more and more. And today we hardly get any feedbacks or negativity around that. But I'm sure, Diane, maybe within the realm, I'm sure that was something that also maybe took some convincing to do internally, right?
Definitely did. I mean, especially kind of even just looking at reviews insights. I mean, we're kind of approaching, and it's almost sort of a cultural shift, and that it doesn't just sit with consumer insights or market research. It sits throughout the organization. I think I had shared something with some of you earlier this week, but, we used to work with a competitor of Revuze, and we were limited in terms of the numbers of seats that we could have. And when we partnered with Revuze a few months ago, we wanted to ensure that we were sharing this across the organization, because this impacts so much of what so many different teams do. So whether that's product development or quality or sales or business intelligence or consumer care or consumer insights or marketing, traditionally. So many people can get, insights when we're doing our new product development. We have our team that does our manuals and does all of the, specifications, and to sort of, ensure that they're, really listening and hearing the consumer. So, for us, it's this idea of really, carrying it across the organization, to the point where I think as of today, we've probably given an overview and training to about 80 folks within our organization, and we still have some to go that we haven't. And so, we're really trying to make sure that everyone understands that they have a piece of it, and to the point where we're even doing our own now employee insights program, so that we can hear from our employees too, because they're at the end of the day a consumer as well.
Thanks for that. I think this number of 80 users, we can tie it back to what Danny said before, because I think you can only get to 80 users if it's simple enough.
Yes,
80 people will adopt it. So I think, again, going back to the question, what will stand out? And Danny, you mentioned that simplicity is going to be the key factor there. I think this is something, again, can actually show us that it's going in the right direction.
Well, but we may make you guys regret unlimited use. We may push it to the limit.
We're up for the challenge, because remember, we're all about democratizing this. So the more, the better. We want it. Again, we're not here to replace anyone. We're here to empower as many as we can, because research is endless, as we all know. Okay, guys, again, we have a time limit here, and we have a few more questions I would like to ask you guys, because I think they're very important to go here, and I would like you, Diane, maybe to take this one and lead this one, and why social listening and reviews insights so significant in understanding consumers' behavior, because there are many ways of doing that, of course, but maybe we'd like to hear from your experience and take, because I think you have a lot in this, is how do you see and why this gets to be more significant in the foundation of understanding consumer behavior?
Yeah, I mean, I think I sort of, in my the answer to the last question sort of, kind of gave a little bit of an overview of how we're approaching it, but we're really understanding the importance of integrating this in particular into our new product development process. So although we may have had, smattering of insights throughout, we're ensuring that, through a traditional, NPD process and our stage gates, that for each one that we're going through, that we're asking ourselves the right questions, that we're making sure that we're, again, whether it's consumers through surveys or tests or our own employees, to say, hey, you may not be familiar with this product. How easy is it to assemble? Really getting that, so that listening, those insights, so that we can integrate that into the product. Because at the end of the day, introducing a product that's not going to have the impact that you thought it was going to have on the consumer is not only, costly if you have to go back and do rework, but it also can cost you, that idea of you only have one chance to make a first impression. So, if you're putting something out there and you're starting to get negative reviews, and now you're having to go back and you're having to rework it, those negative reviews live on, despite what some of my colleagues may believe, you can't remove this reviews, which is, again, a mind shift, if you will, within an organization. But it really has a huge impact versus taking the time and effort, if you will, to make sure that you're integrating, insights into the overall process.
This is great to hear. Danny, anything to add from your side?
Yeah, Dan touched on a lot of great points. And I think this is also kind of a continuation of many of the things that we've said. And, again, I think in my role, where I manage less of the traditional and primary research and more of the flashy, shiny tool, unstructured text, memes, and even just going back to the trust issue. I remember there was a meme that went around a little bit on social that was, I forget exactly what the meme was, but it was basically comparing a product with a 5.0 star rating and a 4.1 star rating, where the perception is that a 4.1, a lower rating, without any understanding of math and correlation, that consumers would willingly buy a 4.1 star product. It could be a 4.2 star product, right? The difference is insignificant because of interpretation, because of influence, right? Because of social. right? Like that influences buying decisions, right? And like that's kind of a larger, really untapped, really unknown, not very widely understood, driver of consumer behavior, because there's so much data, right? There's so many different drivers, and how do you attribute any of that? And we talked about that before too, right? There's weak attribution in social. Doesn't mean it's not useful, right? Virality is a real thing. We've seen it clear shelves for tons of brands, and it's almost hard to kind of describe. And so social kind of in its own world, right? We run a lot of attribute level tracking, right? How people perceive, certain products, ingredients. And then we take a lot of those lenses and we use them in reviews too, right? How people care about red 40, right? And food coloring, right? And sugar, right? And like a lot of these different things that deter people from taking products. But it's also kind of, twofold, right? Some people only take Centrum gummies because they've got sugar on them, right? Or that because they have gelatin. Some people don't like gelatin. Okay? I happen to like gelatin. But I also feel gross when I have to pick all the sugar off of it, right? And so like we've evolved over time. A lot of that's come through reviews. It's come through, basically, ingredient testing, sensory testing, a lot of different things that like R&D does. But a lot of it also comes through ratings and reviews, right? Because it's candid. That's the kind of commonality between the two, is that, and we can kind of bypass the whole incentivized reviews, non-incentivized reviews, right? Organic reviews, right? We can't control that, right? People will come on, and if there's a true complaint with the product, they'll list it. It's the same as that came through social. So there are advantages, but there is also skew in both directions, right? And we might have touched on this, right? Is that the incentivized reviews are going to lean a little more positive. Negative reviews are going to lean a little more negative, right? You rarely come on and write an organic review that's like, oh, I love this product so much, let me take the time to review it. But we also get, this is, again, what's so difficult because you get so many mixed signals when you don't know what to believe, is that we actually get some really good mixed sentiment in our paid reviews, right? It's like, oh, I really like this product. I give it a 4 stars. It's great. I'll take it again. I was paid for this. But also, I don't really like the taste. Other people will like the taste, but I don't, right? In some cases, we had an overwhelming response where no one likes the taste. That was on a innovation that didn't do as well, right? And there was oversight, right? And you go back to the drawing board, right? But that's real time. We didn't have to wait 6 months to learn that. I went out and I did that analysis in 2 days, right? And that comes with the data collection, the analysis, processing, action plan, right? All end to end. So again, consumer behavior changes, right? People are big into gut health, right? And perceived benefits around gut health, right? Size to mental health, right? And immunity, right? There's so many different branches, and people act differently based on different conditions they have, right? People have different budgets, right? Some people can't afford to buy athletic greens for $80 a month or whatever their price point is now, right? So that's also the price element of ratings and reviews. You don't get that as much through social listening. We have, but it's a lot more pronounced through ratings and reviews, where price is a much larger piece or finding or keyword in a word cloud. It's easier to tap into. It's easier to kind of diagnose. And going back to what I think we all talked about, it's democratization. Right? It's like, how do we get to this data sooner? We know it's there, right? We know people have the same. People who complain about our brands also probably complain about our competitors' brands. People mention Advil in Tylenol reviews, right? So there's just so many different dimensions, and we're not perfect at it by any means because it's complex. But what's very clear to us is that there's behaviors here that we wouldn't be able to surface any insight around any other way. So that's kind of our advantage, but also something that's constantly a work in progress and something we're constantly retooling.
I would also like to add on top of that the fact that traditional market research, if it was in the focus group or the survey, you could learn something from it. But if you forgot to put a question in, or if you forgot to, repeat the survey a few years, one after the other, you wouldn't have a benchmark. In reviews, you can see things, and in social listening, I'm assuming as well, you can go back in time and see things over time, something that's very difficult to do with other models. And you can use various types of benchmarks. You can benchmark a product segment to the brand in which it was launched, to the segment, to the subsegment, to the category, to any competitor. It's just like a playground. You can just decide what you want to benchmark against, and you don't need to be burdened with the ability with the necessity to remember to put it in the survey or to put it in the focus group. It's all there, and you could just play around with it. Let's benchmark it here. Let's benchmark it there. Let's compare two time periods to one another. Let's see what happened before the formula change, after the formula change, before we improve the product, after we improve the product. You just play with it. You're not limited by what the survey had in, or by the, whether you did a T0 time frame period kind of, and then repeated it a year later. You have it all across time, across brands, across benchmarks.
Thanks, Noah. We're really running out of time, and we have a few more minutes. And so maybe I think I would just skip the next poll question. And I think the next question I would like to focus on, and I would like you, Diane, to lead this one, because I think that can really summarize everything we've discussed, is what are the selections criteria you actually recommend other companies? Again, we're all trying to share our experience here, is how to choose the right tool for you. For your organization, because there are many out there. Everyone does a lot of promises. Everyone is AI, of course. What help you choose, and what the tips you can give others here and the participants to us, how to choose the right tool for you?
Well, I mean, for me, it's sort of a simple rule to follow. And again, if a couple of my colleagues are on, they're going to probably laugh at this, but it's really all about people, process, and then platform, in that order. So if you don't have the people in place to actually ask the right questions and, determine what the right objectives are that you're trying to accomplish, if you don't have the processes in place to put in motion those objectives and those goals, the platform, as great as it is, even if it's a reviews, is not going to be effective. I've seen it many times where we have a tendency to jump to my colleague just sent me because we're evangelists and we've stolen that from someone else. But we really, putting a platform in place when you don't have all the elements, it's just costly, it's timely, it's frustrating, and it really is not going to give you the results. So it's making sure that, again, it kind of goes back to what I said with AI. It's making sure that you have all the foundational elements in place before you actually start looking at the tools, but always make sure you have a goal and objective and the questions that you want answered in mind.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Thanks, Diane. These are really great tips, actually. I would like to wrap it up before we go to the Q&A, maybe just to introduce myself. My name is Ido. I'm the founder and CEO of Revuze. Founded this company around 13 years ago, quite a long time already. A little bit about Revuze, and I can share with our experience. Again, back then, 13 years ago, we had a clear understanding and vision that market research really needs the help and assistance of technology in order to be able to keep up with how fast markets are changing. Competition is arising. Consumers are changing the preferences. Something needs to come in and help brands move faster at faster pace and take decisions wiser and faster, again, as fast as markets are changing. And we actually came with a thesis that most of what we are trying to achieve with research is already out there. You just need to build, quote unquote, the ability to get to this information online, organize it in a specific way, and then analyze it. And then with the click of a button, you can get to all the insights that research is supposed to give you. And that will bridge over this big gap of how fast market research is, then how markets are changing even faster than that. So basically, we came up with the concept of research warehouse. We have today a research warehouse that has billions and billions of research statistics and insights indexed from the category level analysis all the way down to millions and millions of SKUs. It's always changing when new opinions are being written online. It's something that it always changes, tracks information, feedbacks, and opinions from more than 350 sources around the globe in many, many different languages, of course. This really allows us to change the rules of engagement by pre-calculating almost everything that research is trying to find, and then using simple interfaces with the click of a button, so you can get to the insights you care about with few clicks. And not only that, we took one step further. We've also automated many of the research work analysts are doing today, like SWOT analysis, trend analysis, understanding new arrivals and benchmarking, and pre-calculated all of that as well with the visuals inside it and put it in the warehouse for analysts to be able to work much faster and much more precise. We've been working in the last 10 years with more than 100 of the biggest brands of the world in more than 1,500 different product categories, and it's building up as we go. We are always very, very proud that we are backed by investors which are the leaders in this industry. Nielsen was one of the first investors in the company 13 years ago when they were number one. NPD joined immediately after them. Today they are called Circana. SAP joined as well as investors. So this really gave us the confidence that our vision of how the research market is going to look like a few years after that is certainly gave us the confidence that we are on the right way and gave us all the back wheel that we really needed. Okay, so this is a little bit of background about Revuze and about myself. I'm going to take the last maybe minute for some questions. Guys, if you have any questions, any of the participants, you can just write it in the chat and we'll be able to answer that very quickly. So let's give it a minute or two for questions to ask. Let's see if we have any. Okay, we already have one question for you, Diane. Okay, I'll just read it. How has reviews, online reviews, I'm not asking, but your organization when it comes to how you gather consumer insights now? Okay, is the question clear?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's highly significant insofar as I said, this kind of carries through our organization. So, we have various groups that are actually using consumer reviews. So whether, as I said, it's the marketing team or the copywriting team who might be actually putting together content for our product detail pages on our own site or on a retailer site. It goes into when we develop manuals. Our quality team uses it to determine, is there an issue? I mean, being in the juvenile space, safety is obviously of the utmost importance and top of mind all the time. So what we want to make sure is, are there reviews out there that are calling out potential hazards or potential issues that we might be having with our products, to ensure that we're always paying key attention to that. Again, it goes into our SEO and utilizing the keywords. It goes into just how we talk about our product. Oftentimes, we recently introduced over the last year or so, rotating car seats. Do people use the word rotation? Do they use the word revolving? Do they use the word swivel? What are the words that they're actually using so that we can speak in their own language? So it's highly important. And as I said, it's a big reason why I wanted to ensure that this isn't something that's, traditionally utilized by, certain organizations with certain departments within our organization, that it's really cross-functional.
Thanks so much, Diane. We have one more question that just came in. Just read it out. Is review data a new data set that people are using when conducting market research? My company, the one that wrote that, ad hoc checks reviews for their product, but we don't currently incorporate it in our reporting. So how do you recommend that we get across the importance of review data to the company? That's a question, I think, again, maybe Danny or Diane, that you guys probably did this already internally, how to convince internally that this is the data that needs to be used.
Yeah, this is interesting too, because again, we took it, so social listening obviously came before we had any business intelligence around ratings and reviews. And so initially, we just wanted to apply the same type of reporting. Right. So it's not just like, where's the insight and the finding and where can I search for as my new innovation? I have a pickle flavor chapstick now, right? Like that out and this again results. There was a performance element to it, right? Like, how do I increase my overall star rating or average star rating over the last 3 months from 4.6 to 4.7? Is that significant? Depends, right? So there was no cadence. There really was no report structure around that. right? Share, right? Share of positive sentiment, share of immunity, right? Share of this product works for me, right? You can get highly specific around the lexicon and like how you would want to measure that. And once you start putting things in tables, putting numbers and arrows, stoplights, that gets people's attention, right? Because now we have an understanding month to month where things change, right? I want the positive sentiment around all my brands to grow, by 5 to 10% every single month, every single day, right? And what's also great about reviews, which we said, is that you can't control it, right? It's like if my product is getting, you have to look at this in terms of volume and in terms of sentiment, right? So if I have 100 reviews and then next month I've got 200 reviews, right? I had 100 new reviews over the last month. How many of them are positive? Let's say 80. That's fantastic. How many of them are syndicated? Let's say 20%, right? We put less money behind this, right? And it was organic, right? Brand new product release. We're doing some kind of in-store promotion, some other kind of, promotion to tactic digital, whatever that looks like. And sure enough, it's happening, right? We have a good product. We have the data to substantiate it. Maybe there's a couple things in there that say, hey, might work for 90% of the results you're seeing, but 10% of the audience we're targeting, they don't like this product. Or there's in Diane's world, right? There's a product malfunction, right? Maybe there's a certain lot that was damaged, right? I don't know. Maybe there's some defect, right? You have to issue a recall, right? There's all these kind of there's infinite possibilities for what you could do. But how are you going to act on that? On that, you need data, you need reporting, business intelligence. A lot of companies don't have that. So that's where I think it became very clear to us because we're an analytics team, right? We're a performance team. And so we took a lot of the frameworks we had in social, looking at it the same exact way, right? How do I grow share? Positive sentiment. Rating is a newer thing, right? Rating doesn't really exist in social. But just trading KPI for KPI, right? And we have competitor data, right? So ideally, I want all of my numbers to be above, right? Ollie vitamins and Nature's Made, and those other products we compete against. So that's what I would say to that. I think that's a really easy way to get by and to get people's attention. So if your company's not paying attention to it, that's because it's unproven. And they haven't seen or realized the potential for the amount of insight and the drivers that you could look at, right? It's more than just qual, right? Which is really the meat of it. But some executives are persuaded by qual, persuaded by quant, especially in companies that are heavily driven by share, like us, right? It's about numbers, less about anecdote. So hopefully that answered your question. That was kind of more a recommendation too, on top of an answer.
That's great. Well, we need to wrap here. I would like to give a big shout out for Diane, Danny, and Noah, of course. I think almost all participants stayed until the end, and most of them even went over the hour mark to this Q&A session. So many thanks for you participating in this, I think, extra interesting webinar. Again, it's really, I think, amazing that we can see in front of our eyes the whole traditional domain being revolutionized in front of our eyes, and we're happy to be part of this motion. Thanks again, guys. Thanks for all of those that stayed until now and those that had to leave a few minutes ago. We hope to see you in the next webinars that are going to be equally interesting. Thank you so much, and we do wish you to have a great rest of the days. Thank you.
Very. Wow.